All right, Shalom. All praises, honor, and glory goes to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rekah Kwadash. Yahweh is who the world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai is his son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, and there's no God beside them. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone for being faithful witnesses to the Holy Spirit, and salutations to the elect, whom the Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is given the ears to hear. All right. And if I hadn't said it, the water too, Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, for allowing me to do another lesson. And I came across this article, which is a spirit. I was meditating, asking the Lord, give me something to speak on. And this article came out where it says the slow disappearance of cash in Europe. Under the guise of fighting money laundering, the EU is making anonymous economic activity progressively harder. Starting in July 2027, Europeans will no longer be allowed to pay businesses or professionals more than 10,000 euros in cash. Any transaction above 3,000 euros will require mandatory customer identification. You see? And this is a rule to the MOTB, wherein your money will be linked to your person, your personnel. Your money will be linked to money, and the money that you spend will be linked to you. All right. When you go into what is the mark of the beast, and you go into the word mark, the very base origin of the word mark goes into the word grapho, which goes into writings. All right. Your writings is your identification. Your social security number, driver's license, passport. Okay. So it says, this is another step toward political uniformity across Europe, stripping countries of autonomy and subtly pushing citizens together toward the digital euro. This measure, part of the new AMLR, which stands for Anti-Money Laundering Regulation, applies directly to all member states. Under the pretext of fighting money laundering, Brussels is imposing yet another form of forced harmonization that ignores the principle of subsidiarity. The idea that decisions should be made at the level closest to citizens and national governments. What was once a matter regulated by individual countries is now becoming a uniform mandate from Brussels. This is a thinly disguised restriction not only on political freedom, but above all on economic freedom. Cash remains one of the last truly private means of exchange still available. Unlike digital transactions, cash does not automatically create a centralized record accessible to banks or public authorities. The use of cash is often associated with the intention to hide illicit activity. Yet, the ability to conduct private and discreet transactions is a natural extension of property rights and freedom of contract. Many law-abiding citizens prefer cash for entirely legitimate reasons, including protection against the financial instability or potential capital controls. From that date onward, professionals will be forced to turn every transaction above 3,000 euros into a bureaucratic process involving identity verification, data collection, and the risk of penalties. This is yet another regulatory imposition that raises the cost of doing business, similar to the introduction of VAT in Europe decades ago. So VAT stands for valued added tax. And Europe is a good consumption tax assessed on goods and services at each stage of the supply chain. Okay. So for sake of time, I'm not going to go into all of these links and whatnot, but you could do your own homework. As you see, this article is on Zero Hedge and is entitled "The Slow Disappearance of Cash in Europe." All right, and as it is written, though it tarry, wait for it. The last prophecy that's at one point seemed that it was tarrying is the mark of the beast. One of the last major prophecies, that is. Okay. Um. So this devil is putting all his eggs in this basket. All right. As the saying goes, a lot of alternative news. Well, I can't say a lot, but ones I've been watching, they've been pushing forth the you will own nothing and be happy. Okay. And this is a step towards that vision, right? To where they can control your every move. Small entrepreneurs, already pressured by high taxes and excessive red tape, will once again bear the heaviest burden. What were once simple voluntary exchanges will become sources of additional costs, delays, and state intrusion. Once again, centralized authorities are creating regulatory complexities under the difficulty to challenge justification of fighting crime, even though each country already has its own rules in this area. It reminds me of the precept, I think it's Psalms 58, where it says they encourage themselves in an evil matter. And there's another one that speaks on how they lay snares. Psalm 64 and 5. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? Okay. And this denotes, by them doing this denotes that anybody that's not in agreement to what they're trying to push must be a criminal. What do you have to hide? All right. Knowing this man's a thief and a robber, and if you give him access, like they say, you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. He'll definitely destroy you. Right? Let's say instead of putting your money under your bed or in the shoebox, you put it in a, what is one of these banks or institutions. That money is not safe. For one, you have fraud and things of that nature, but then you also have to where they can dip into your account and take out various fees at will. And that's exactly what they want, to have you on a string, on a it says they search out iniquities, right? And it says injustice, unrighteousness, violent deeds of injustice. All right. They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. In the easy English, it reads, it says, shoot words that hurt like arrows. I don't like the way that's written. Let's see. Shooting at the innocent from concealment. Suddenly they shoot, fearing nothing. They concoct an evil scheme for themselves. They enumerate their hidden snares. They say, who will see them? So it says, this measure, we're just going to read fast. It says more liberal countries such as Germany will lose flexibility since they previously had no general limit on cash payments. The uniformity imposed by Brussels ignores cultural differences, particularly differing levels of trust in institutions. It says in some countries, cash culture remains deeply rooted and confidence in digital systems is significantly low. This measure represents a gradual erosion of individual autonomy. If using cash becomes increasingly inconvenient for merchants and consumers, people will naturally migrate toward digital payments. Over time, this initially convenient shift will make the introduction of the digital euro far easier. It is difficult to believe that it is a mere coincidence that these restrictions are scheduled to take effect in July 2027, at roughly the same time the ECB plans to launch the first pilots of the digital euro. Cash becomes inconvenient and potentially risky at the same time digital money is presented as the practical alternative. Once the principle is established that the state can limit private cash transactions, there is a strong tendency for those limits to become progressively stricter. European European countries themselves demonstrated this pattern when they still controlled these rules nationally. Belgium, for example, steadily lowered its cash payment ceiling over the years to the current 3,000 euros. It says the most likely outcome is that the new European wide limit of 10,000 euros, which may seem relatively high today, will gradually be reduced further until using cash for most significant transactions becomes impractical. In reality, the vast majority of cash transactions are already well below this threshold. According to studies by ECB, around 81% of all point of sale payments are below 25 euros, and cash is predominantly used for small everyday purchases. This means that 10,000 euro limit will mainly affect legitimate high value transactions, such as the payment of certain professional services that many citizens and small businesses still prefer to carry out in cash. You know? And a lot of time as a business owner, you would do that so the government doesn't see how much your business is worth and therefore cannot tax you accordingly. Right? But again, this devil wants to X out the middle class anyway, to where there's only the super rich and everyone else. All right. And this is something that will be pushed throughout the whole four corners of the earth. When you read the scriptures, it clearly says he calls it for all. The word calls is what we're seeing now, to where he's publishing situations to bring forth his MOTB. Whereas we know the system going into the image has to be pushed first. Okay? So we'll leave it at that. Lord willing, you occupant Aqua for edified. As always, pray to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai that you, as well as the believers, may escape these trying times. Right? So with that, shalom to the elect.